Okay, this is going to be a quick video on showing you how to use the bidirectional controls in a scan tool. The scan tool I'm using for this particular video is the Snap-on Virus. So let's go ahead and get started. So with this task, in order to access the bidirectional controls, usually you're going to be in, there's going to be a tab on whatever scan tool you're using. There's going to be a tab that'll say something similar to, like this one here says functional tests. Sometimes it'll say output controls, or something of that nature. So I'm going to click on functional tests, and it brings up a whole bunch of different options for me here, and I'm going to go over here to output controls. So click on, if I can get my finger to click on it. And these are all the things that I can actually control using output controls. So for instance, if I want to look at the cooling fans. So here's the cooling fans, high speed. So I'll click on that and it brings up the cooling fans. And up here at the top, there's on off. So if I turn them on, you can hear the fan kick on, starts working, turn it back off. So by doing this particular test, what I can do is I can test, number one, that the fans are actually working, the fan motors are good, all of the wiring is good from the BCM all the way, or the ECM all the way up to the fans. So if the fans are not working on the car, it's got to be a control issue. So the switch that tells the PCM to turn on and off the fans, it's got to be something in that side of it. Because by just operating it here, I can verify that the fans work. And so that's what we're doing on this. And so if we want to go back, we can try a different test. So all these tests here you're going to eventually do, but for this class, what I wanted you to do mostly is just look and see all of these different things that you can operate. So for instance, we'll do the IAC control. So with this one, we have to start the vehicle up. And let me see if I can get it so that you don't have a glare on the screen. But the IAC control is right here. This stands for idle air control motor. So we're going to start the engine up. And we're going to hit the IAC control. Now with the IAC control, you have to kind of wait for the engine to stabilize. And then what we can do is, right now it's idling at 1,000 RPMs. We can bump that down. Just keep hitting the little button here. And we've got it down to 425 RPMs now. We can also raise it up. There's 2,000 RPMs. So we can control the idle with the output controls. When you exit out of it, it's going to go back to the target idle, which I think is somewhere around 900 RPM. So this, for instance, and where you can use these. So not only can we test to see if the idle air control motor is actually working, but remember those tests that we had to do on the car that had to do with testing the alternator output. You had to run the engine at 2,000 RPMs to check the alternator output. Well, if you don't have somebody there to help you run the engine at 2,000 RPMs, you can go into the output controls, go to idle air control motor, run the RPMs up, and then go do your test on the alternator. And so that's another option that you can do with that. And so if you look through this menu here, we can test all 6 of the injectors. We can look at the generator L terminal. So in other words, you can turn on and off the L terminal, which what that does is it turns on and off the generator. So the alternator So if you turn off the L terminal, the alternator will stop producing electricity. And so you can determine whether or not that works. You can look at fuel trim, you can look at closed loop fuel pump, you can turn the fuel pump on and off. So all these things that you can do. You can operate your EGR, cruise control. If this was an actual car, you could actually operate your cruise control going down the road with the scan tool. So anyway, that's all there is to bidirectional controls. So the bidirectional controls are there so that you can test to see if the computer can actually control things. And if the computer can control the item from the scan tool here, then that means that you've got a control issue and not a output issue. So if that makes sense. So in the case of our cooling fans, the cooling fans themselves work, so that's not the problem. You don't need to go buy a new set of cooling fans. What turns them on and off is the problem. And so you just need to diagnose that. So anyway, that wraps up output controls.